Hello, this is a presentation about leadership. It will begin by defining what leadership is, then talking about the difference between managing and leadership. It will talk about some of the styles of leadership and then go on to talk about the Globe Project study. It will finish by discussing what Japanese managers believe about their subordinates and how these beliefs are similar and different to those of the US and European managers. It will also describe the leader-follower conflicts that might occur and how one might overcome them. Luthans and Doe define leadership as the process of influencing people to direct their efforts towards the achievement of some particular goal or goals. What is the difference between managing and leading? A leader is someone that is chosen by individuals or a group as a member who most clearly epitomises the characteristics of the individual members. This process can be done formally or informally. However, the group also needs to consider what is the collective good for the group, decide priorities and respond to those priorities. The person who decides what shall be done is called the manager. It is also interesting that if the group agrees with what the manager decides, then the manager can also be the leader. But if not, then the manager is only a manager because the decisions made go against the individual needs. There are many styles of leadership, and Luthans and Doe refer to three styles of leadership: paternalistic, authoritarian, and participative. Paternalistic is the use of work-centred behaviour coupled with a protective employee-centred concern. Authoritarian, this is the use of work-centred behaviour designed to ensure a task accomplishment and refers to leaders' assertion to absolute authority and control. This is effective in groups of low achievers. Participative is the use of both work or task-centred and people-centred approaches to leading subordinates. This is effective with high achievers. As the presentation continues, you will see that there are multiple styles of leadership, but these three styles of leadership are a basis for leadership, and you will see some similarities with the others. It is also important to note that culture plays an important role with leadership, and this will also be demonstrated further in the presentation. The Globe Project study involved research collected from over 17,000 participants from 950 organisations and 62 societies. The primary goal of the project was to find out which leadership behaviours are universally accepted and which are culturally contingent. In the larger group of leader behaviours, it was found that 22 attributes were universally deemed to be desirable, being honest, encouraging, effective bargainers, decisive, motivational, and dynamics are examples of the attributes that are believed to facilitate outstanding leadership in all Globe countries. Universally negative traits include uncooperative, egocentric, ruthless, and dictatorial. And leadership styles and behaviours found to be culturally contingent are charismatic, team-oriented, self-protected, participative, humane, and autonomous. Globe also verified 10 cultural clusters from 62 cultural samples which had similar leadership styles. These cultural clusters were identified as Latin America, Anglo, Latin Europe, Nordic Europe, Germanic Europe, Eastern Europe, Confucius Asia, Southern Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Middle East. In the Globe Project, Japan is part of the Confucian Asian cluster. This cluster has 4 leadership styles: participative, charismatic, which is a combination of paternalistic and participative, directive, which is authoritarian, and supportive, which is also paternalistic. The Japanese are well known for their paternalistic approach with a high need for safety and security. They also have a high belief in the capacity of their subordinates for leadership and initiative, which is also fostered by this paternalistic approach. Ambiguous goals are also often set by leaders, and subordinates will over-prepare to make sure that they have all the answers. This is demonstrated through the salaryman, who can answer any question put to them by senior management or their subordinates, as they have the experience in knowing what people want and gather a lot of information to make sure that they are well prepared. They are also extremely good with their day-to-day running of the business, which leaves the senior management or executive to focus on the bigger picture and harmony of the organisation. This approach is again a supportive and paternalistic one. There is also a study by Pellegrini and Scandura that indicates that paternalistic leadership in Confucius countries is separated into 3 styles: paternalistic authoritarianism, paternalistic benevolence, and a combination of the two, which has been found to be the most effective paternalistic approach. Directive leadership in Japan has a positive and negative impact. It is good for getting the job done, but has bad influences on team outcomes and cohesiveness, and subordinates are less likely to unite to complete common goals. Charismatic leadership also had a positive influence in Japan with communication processes and high income, but there is evidence that both charismatic and directive leadership is becoming less popular now. And lastly, supportive leadership also had a positive effect, and in particular with communication processes and cohesiveness. Looking at a comparison of Japan, the USA and Europe, we know that Japan favours a paternalistic approach followed by participative. Europe favours a participative overall, but all styles are used in Europe as it has such a wide range of cultures and 4 clusters within its own. Due to Europe having 4 cluster groups, we will just focus on the Germanic Europe cluster. The USA predominantly has a charismatic leadership style. To further assist us with our comparison, let's have a look at some visual data from the Globe project. You'll see on the vertical axis 6 leadership styles. Some we have already discussed, but some are new. I will point out 2 of the new ones in a little more detail. The first one is team-oriented. This is similar to the supportive leadership style, which is a combination of the participative and the paternalistic. It also has a strong emphasis on teams. The second one is self-protective. This is a newly defined leadership dimension which focuses on safety and security of the individual. It is self-centered and face-saving in its approach. Self-protective leadership is generally reported to impede outstanding leadership. Japan's highest scores are with team-oriented and charismatic. However, note that they are still lower than the average Globe score. Germanic Europe scores highest in charismatic and participative, followed by team-oriented. Charismatic and participative are higher than the average Globe score, while team-oriented is lower. The USA's highest scores are with charismatic, participative, and then followed by team orientation. Charismatic and participative are both higher than the Globe average score, whilst team-oriented is exactly around the Globe average. The last score that I would like to point out is in relation to self-protective. You can see here that Japan is a lot higher than the other countries who are well below the average Globe score. Looking at the results, we can see from across the board that charismatic is the most compatible style, followed by team-oriented. We also now know that self-protective is the least compatible between. So what does this mean? Let's have a look at some examples of how to put this into practice. So the first example is that all 3 countries are charismatic. This means a leader or subordinate can go from one of these countries and work in the other without too many issues. These people enjoy inspiring motivation, high performance, and people. The second example is that all 3 countries are team-oriented. This means a leader or subordinate can also go from any one of these countries and work in the other without too many issues. These people enjoy teams, common purposes, and sharing and caring. But stop, this all sounds too good to be true. One thing to keep in mind is that these are just the most common leadership styles within these countries and areas. They are not the only leadership style. There are multiple leadership styles, so you need to be able to adapt for each situation. Example 3 is that Japanese are more self-protective and have a culture of saving face. For example, if a Japanese subordinate was to work under a leader from the USA or a Germanic cluster country, there may be issues arising if they try and save face. So what can you do to overcome problems? You can be culturally aware, be adaptive and prepared for change, do your research, talk to people who work there, seek advice. Don't use just one style of leadership. Lead by example, and also be patient. Thank you.